If government changes by the end of the year, the Making Queensland Safer laws will be laws. I've previously spoken to this body about what that means. Things like removing detention as a last resort, embedding in sentencing that the rights of the victim should come before the rights of the offender.
Appreciate your time. Does Queensland have a youth crime crisis?
Well, certainly we see right across Queensland and right around Australia and the world that there is challenges when it comes to community safety, but that's why the Premier's been really decisive about launching an evidence-based, expert-based community safety plan. And what that delivers is more support for victims, better frontline resources, intervention, prevention and detention when it's necessary in the interest of community safety. For the last 12 months, youth crime has reduced. It's reduced by 6%. The number of vehicles stolen by youths have come down 9%. And whilst there's still more to do, because we need to make sure that people are not only safe, but they feel safe, certainly we're seeing a positive emerging trend.
But since 2018-19, the number of serious repeat offenders increased by 65% over 4 years. Is that not a crisis?
Well, what you've seen with the most recent police data is those numbers of serious repeat offenders have actually reduced. In fact, it's now under 400 statewide. It's down 32% over 10 years. And yes, there is a cohort of offenders who are serious recidivist offenders who are causing a lot of harm in the community, and we take a no-tolerance approach with them. We've strengthened the laws, more of those are in custody for longer, more of those are in detention for longer, and more of those are getting more intervention services. It's why we've boosted the resources for the police to do more proactive patrols, but also more engagement with those serious repeat offenders.
Because the LNP is calling it a crisis. Is it a crisis, yes or no?
Well, whatever people want to call it, it is a concern in the community. We acknowledge that everyone's on the same page when it comes to this. The community wants to be safe and they want to feel safe. That's why we've launched this comprehensive plan. We're seeing an emerging positive trend. The numbers are coming down, but we've got to stick the course.
They're coming down off a high base. You've been police minister for 8 years. Do you take some responsibility for the way crime ballooned under Labor?
Well, part of the thing that is driving increased crime rates is increased domestic and family violence reporting. We need to make sure that we're supporting domestic and family violence victims, and that is why we've increased penalties, we've created new offences, we've provided more support, we've given police more training to better support victims and ensure those people committing domestic and family violence receive proper consequence, but also proper intervention.
It's about 1:15 in the morning in the Townsville suburb of Munning. 2 young people manage to open the screen door of this home and head inside. A few minutes later, they return with keys. And so begins a 2.5-hour joyride, all caught on dashcam.
Resolved in the affirmative.
Tonight, Australia taking an unprecedented step, becoming the first country in the world to ban the use of social media apps for anyone under the age of 16.
That's pretty huge.
The landmark law, which overwhelmingly passed with bipartisan support.
That's not clean. That is wild. Look at it.
I saw RAF Lakenheath, and this is generating concern at the highest levels of the federal government. Let me go ahead and read you a quote from the office of Senator Kirsten Gillibrand of New York. Quote, today, U.S. Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, and U.S. Senators Cory Booker and Andy Kim sent a letter to the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, Federal Bureau of Investigation, and of these drone incidents. We request that the Department of Homeland Security, the FAA, and the
No, I want to see anything. I haven't really seen the area. Not sure what it is. There's lots of others. Didn't get there? They wouldn't do it. So where's that first? Yeah, there was some at 30 probably. But I mean, they're shooting way up. We'd say maybe up to the 50s, it looks like.
Keeps zipping out towards the ocean and then coming back in about, 20 miles or closer to us. And then zips back out of the ocean and we can't see it. 1 on the clock. Sorry, 45, back right now, there. One, I want up here. I want to every day and nothing. I want to get back to picture, but we got the rubber here. Will do. It's still continuing. It's a red, we're only seeing one. It's a red circle-shaped object that's zipping out over towards the ocean. It disappears for a little bit, and then it zips back in about 20 miles from us off the right side of the aircraft. It's picking it up on TCAS. It comes back in, and then it zips back out over the ocean at a rapid rate of speed, faster than anything I've ever seen move. 1 on the Fox. I'm trying to get a video of it. Go to 6-3, the north of the board, monitor 50. Go to 6-3, the north of the board, monitor 50. Oh, that's we're going quarter now. I got to return to the alarm, and I clear the direct, and I can 1 by 20, and I can got 1 4 now, 6 3 0, the first, and I can welcome back to 1 3 0 2 8 or 13 0 how do you like? 1 will keep it worth it, but I want to go worth it. 6 3, the second 6 3 on 1 1 5 and a half speed. I kind of landed back with water, that'll block the way, and let's see anything or thanks for sharing. Yeah. Medevac 1 named Fox, appreciate all the reports.
The most advanced military aircraft that commonly gets used probably throwing out all of these mundane
red dot that floats in and out of the video.
That was the one that was at our altitude that would come up to us and sit for about 3 to 5 seconds, and then it would go back out over the ocean, over the horizon.
We're seeing 3 or 4 targets. Yeah, they're all altitudes, up and down. It's pretty crazy.
One researcher suggests it's a light bouncing off a Starlink satellite over the Pacific Ocean, catching the eye of pilots, something that's reportedly happened before. But Joe says this ain't that.
I don't think Starlink, like I said, satellites don't typically change directions. But then again, I could be wrong, but I honestly don't think it was. I've never seen a satellite move like that.
I reached out to the Federal Aviation Administration to see if they can confirm this UFO sighting. They kept it short and sweet, saying a pilot saw unidentified lights.
TCAS works off a transponder code. So for something to register, it was registering like an aircraft. So
1, 2,
2, 3, 4. We don't want nuclear war.
It's happened before, and no doubt it'll happen again.
When do we want? No French test. When do we want? Now.
People power on our streets.
We need to rise up out of our chairs and use our democracy. How lucky are we to have a democracy?
The AUKUS alliance is being hailed as a historic move.
The future of the Indo-Pacific will impact all our futures. To meet these challenges, to help deliver the security and stability our region needs, we must now take our partnership to a new level.
The future of each of our nations, and indeed the world, depends on a free and open Indo-Pacific enduring and flourishing in the decades ahead.
I think it's a tremendous announcement and the right decision for Australia's national security.
It's also a controversial announcement.
Unbelievable. I had no idea that they were up to this. How long have they been negotiating this?
This white paper is recommending we spend close to $400 billion over the forward estimates. Now, at some point, the PM is going to ask a very simple question. In order to protect us from which enemy?
It's so hard to say.
400 billion, pick one.
A regional player.
Specifically, Colonel?
An Indo-Pacific regional player.
More specifically?
Indo-Asia-Pacific.
That's broader. Who are you leaving out?
Europe?
Yeah, I sort of need a country.
Or an unaligned player.
No, a country. One that won't threaten us. Just one. I'll name one and you just nod. China. Yeah? And what exactly are we protecting?
Strategic interests.
Specifically, Colonel?
Indo-Asia-Pacific strategic.
You know what? I'll say it and then you nod. Our trade routes. And who is our number one trading partner? China? Yeah. So under this scenario, we're spending close to $30 billion a year to protect our trade with China from China. And that doesn't strike anyone at this table as odd? Okay.
Restraint is the name of the game in this budget. The words of Jim Chalmers, the Treasurer. Is it restraint to spend $368 billion on nuclear submarines? Is it restraint to spend $12 billion a year, every year, for 30 years to buy 8 submarines that'll only make us more likely to follow the US into another war? Is it restraint to spend $254 billion on $9,000 tax cuts for billionaires and the very wealthy? Is it restraint to spend $40 billion on subsidies for fossil fuel companies? It seems that when the Treasurer preaches restraint, that applies only to everyday people. In reality, this government is on a reckless spending binge of over $600 billion for the very wealthy, for big coal and gas corporations, for massive weapons manufacturers. $600 billion for the big corporations and billionaires, but only $500 million a year for affordable housing, which will see the housing crisis get worse. $600 billion for the big corporations and billionaires, but not a cent more for our woefully underfunded public schools. $600 billion for the big corporations and billionaires, but not a cent to bring dental into Medicare. $600 billion for the big corporations and billionaires, but not a cent more for raising the pension so older Australians don't live in poverty. $368 billion on nuclear submarines. This is truly staggering in its economic irrationality, recklessness and cowardice. These submarines aren't for defending Australia. They're supporting the US's attempt to dominate the Pacific to secure its strategic interests, which, mind you, just happen to be the interests of its biggest multinational corporations.
An ancient advanced civilization live in secret within a network of cave systems deep underground. This concept is known as Inner Earth, and there's a surprising number of ancient stories and occult beliefs revolving around these hidden subterranean realms. A secret society that harnessed a limitless energy source from an underground alien colony. A Nazi megabase hidden deep beneath Antarctica that still operates to this day. And a famous American explorer who flew into an inner Earth entrance by accident and documented this world firsthand.
2014. Scientists researching the Earth's mantle announced that they have found what they believe to be a vast body of water, 3 times the volume of all of our oceans combined, contained within a mineral layer 400 miles inside the Earth.
We can tell you more about the surface of the moon than we can the surface underneath our own oceans.
Since we've not actually drilled down far enough to confirm these findings, could it be that we may be wrong about the composition of our own Earth? According to our earliest mythologies, an other Earth might not be found in the heavens, but deep within our own planet.
One of the most consistent themes that we find in ancient cultures when we travel around the world is the idea that there is another world, another Earth inside of the planet.
Within Buddhism, there's stories of a place called Agartha, or Agarthi, which is an inner world, and it's inhabited too by people, and that they are an advanced race, and even that they have trains and vehicles that are moving through this inner Earth.
Is it possible that an other Earth can be located within the confines of our own planet?
The scientist Edmund Halley is most famous for Halley's Comet. He was also very interested in the Earth, and one of the challenges was trying to figure out what was the real structure of the inside of the Earth. He had a fascinating theory of not just a hollow Earth, but an Earth with multiple layers.
75 years later, 18th century mathematician Leonhard Euler put forth his own hollow Earth theory, with no concentric shells and a sun at the center, spanning 600 miles.
Euler was a gifted mathematician. He developed this idea that the planet Earth is not only hollow, but the poles are actually thinned. And there are actually entrances into the inner core at the North and South Poles.
Admiral Richard Byrd flew reconnaissance missions over the North Pole. Byrd allegedly reported in his private journal about a mysterious land beyond the North Pole, which he called the center of the great unknown.
Admiral Richard Byrd was able to fly to the North Pole and back and recorded flying over lush green areas where none should have been. And then 3 years later, he flew over the South Pole.
It's rumored that when Admiral Byrd's task force actually got to Antarctica, that one of the first things they discovered was an entrance into a hollow Earth civilization that was populated by very, very advanced beings.
Admiral Byrd made a lot of unusual statements, including talking about what he called a new kind of craft that could fly from pole to pole.
La desaparición del Ara San Juan fue una de las grandes tragedias navales de la Argentina. El 15 de noviembre de 2017, el submarino perdió contacto con la Armada y nunca más volvería a establecer comunicación. Había salido desde Ushuaia, en el sur del país, con rumbo a Mar del Plata, uno de los puertos más importantes. A bordo viajaban 44 tripulantes. Un año después, el 17 de noviembre de 2018, fue encontrado a 900 metros de profundidad frente a las costas del Golfo San Jorge, en el Atlántico Sur. Pero, ¿qué pasó realmente con el submarino?
An aircraft operating in the North Sea often picked up mysterious signals that seemed to be coming from somewhere far to the north. With war raging across Europe, though, and no vital Allied interests anywhere near the Arctic, the signals were disregarded as a curiosity and generally ignored. However, while the Allies were ignoring these mysterious signals, it was the Nazis themselves who were sending them, all from a secret installation deep in the Arctic, and just north of Russia. Was this a new Nazi supervillain base in the Arctic? 1,000 miles shy of the North Pole, and only a few hundred miles from Russian territory, scientists from the Russian Arctic National Park unearthed the remains of a secret base on a remote island known as Alexandraland.
Antarctica, one of the most brutally cold places in the world. A frozen desert where no life exists except for at its melting edges. On its southern side sits a deep bay known as the Ross Sea. Here that America's McMurdo Station has become a hub of international polar exploration. The cliffs of the iceberg are an incredible 9 stories high.
But about halfway up, there's a strange dark smear visible in the pristine ice.
As the ship gets closer, it looks like debris stuck in the iceberg. But what is it?
In Antarctica, planes go missing at an alarming rate. So maybe these are the remains of a plane that crashed into the side of an iceberg?
Of wood and large pieces of canvas are sticking out of the iceberg's face. Sections of canvas appear to be large pieces of tarpaulin. The wooden boards look like the interior walls of a hut.
What is the tarpaulin covering? Could it be the roof of some kind of makeshift structure?
4 thick poles are jutting out of the ice. They look like telephone poles.
The presence of these poles clearly indicate that this was some kind of camp.
But do these poles provide enough of a clue to figure out whose camp it is? Little America 3 was bigger than its first 2 camps, with room for more equipment and a powerful radio broadcasting station that required several large telephone poles for transmission.
Large poles sticking out of the iceberg, evidence of Byrd's old camp?
Something seems to be going on this mysterious continent at the South Pole. And it has been theorized by a number of people that Antarctica is some kind of alien base.
Rumors of extraterrestrial activity in Antarctica have circulated for years. If these accounts are true, and there is, in fact, an extraterrestrial presence in Antarctica today, could it have been there for hundreds or even thousands of years? A whistleblower who offered to provide her with classified information regarding Antarctica on the condition that she not reveal his identity. Her source, a retired Navy SEAL who she identifies as Spartan 1, provided her with details of an ancient structure he claims to have visited during his time at the South Pole.
At the very top of the first structure we entered, there was almost 18 feet poking from the ice. The rest of it was hidden under the ice. Each door was the same, anywhere from 18 feet thick to around 30 feet thick. And even though these doors were that thick and that heavy, you could take one finger and push them and they would open. There was no resistance whatsoever.
In January of 2015, a U.S. Navy flight engineer who served with the Antarctic Development Squadron at McMurdo for 14 years came forward to investigate reporter Linda Moulton Howe with bizarre accounts of his time in Antarctica.
In January 2015, I got an email from a retired naval flight engineer. He's asked me to call him only Brian in the world public. And this is what he told me. From about 1983 to when he retired from the Navy in 1997, he was in all kinds of what they call Antarctic Squadron expedition missions that included rescuing people in and out of various places. And all these trips, nothing of a high strangeness had occurred, and then all of a sudden it was one thing after another. During a squadron mission in the Transantarctic Mountains, the whole crew saw a whole bunch of silver darting objects, and they are round. And he says they're doing the strangest thing. They're going like to this peak in a group, to this peak in a group, to this peak in a group, and then they'd all take off. And not only did this happen once, it happened over and over.
1938, aware that he was on the brink of war, Hitler dedicated considerable resources to searching for mysterious ancient artifacts said to have incredible power. One of these expeditions launched on December 17, 1938. The SS Schwabenland was sent on a secret mission to Antarctica. On board were scientists and engineers, but also members of the Thule Society, a German occultist group. The Thule Society believed that a highly advanced race of human-like beings called Aryans existed somewhere deep inside the Earth, and the entrance to their world was at the South Pole. The classified mission of the SS Schwabenland was to find a location for a secret underground base and make contact with the Aryans living in the Hollow Earth. And once contact was made, negotiate for access to their technology. The ship reached the Antarctic coast a month later. For the next 3 weeks, they mapped hundreds of thousands of square miles of the continent. About 150 miles inland, aerial reconnaissance found what is described as an Arctic oasis, an area about 300 square miles that was free of ice, filled with warm water, and even contained plant life. In the ocean beneath the oasis was a geothermal vent that kept the area relatively warm. This was the ideal place for a base, especially for U-boats. This is where the Nazis would establish the infamous underground facility known as Base 211. Over the course of World War II, Base 211 became a massive complex, as large as a small city. Initially, it was designed as an offensive structure, but it's important that you understand what kind of man Richard Byrd was. He was not some pseudoscience conspiracy theorist kook. He was a legitimate badass. Here are the bullet points. Richard Byrd reached the rank of Rear Admiral by the age of 41, the youngest admiral in Navy history. Now that by itself is impressive, but how about this? He was a recipient of the Medal of Honor, the Navy Cross, the Flying Cross, and the Silver Life-Saving Medal. In all, he received 22 citations and commendations, including 9 for bravery and 2 for extraordinary heroism. He was, to this day, one of the most highly decorated officers in the history of the Navy. Now his resume goes on, but I think you get the point. If Admiral Byrd says he wants to be the first man to fly over the North Pole, he does it. And if the United States sends a major expedition to the South Pole to conduct a top-secret mission, well, there's no more qualified person on the face of the Earth to lead it than Admiral Richard E. Byrd. Operation High Jump commenced in August 1946. The official purpose of the mission was to train personnel and test equipment in cold temperatures, to explore Arctic geology, study the weather, and develop techniques for establishing air bases in frigid climates. Admiral Byrd led a Navy task force of almost 5,000 men aboard 13 ships, including a brand new state-of-the-art aircraft carrier loaded with dozens of planes, bombers, and helicopters. This task force was armed to the teeth. There were 2 destroyers, tankers, supply ships, icebreakers, 2 heavily armed seaplanes, and an attack submarine, all fully stocked with the best weapons in the entire Navy. It's a lot of firepower for training exercises and studying the weather. Right? That mission was the cover story. No personnel training or equipment testing ever took place. No practice maneuvers. No military exercises. No scientific study of any kind was ever done. According to eyewitness testimony, declassified records, and Byrd's own journal, Operation High Jump had other purposes. One goal was to extend American sovereignty over the Antarctic continent, something that was denied many times publicly by the U.S. government. The other goal was to locate and destroy the secret Nazi military complex known as Base 211 and capture any flying saucers they could. The Armada arrived on January 15th and immediately started building a base called Little America. But then the Operation High Jump story takes a turn. Originally meant to be a 6 to 8 month mission, after just 40 days, the base is evacuated and the task force withdraws. This massive, expensive, and important mission is suddenly terminated. The Navy task force retreated to Chile, and as soon as they made port, rumors spread about strange findings and disasters that forced the mission to be cut short. Admiral Byrd himself spoke to the media, and rather than deny the stories, he expressed deep concern about the real possibilities of devastating aerial attacks on the U.S. This doesn't sound like a guy on a scientific mission. It sure doesn't. Byrd warned that it was imperative for the United States to take immediate defensive measures against hostile forces in the Arctic and Antarctic. The Admiral went on to say that he wasn't trying to alarm anyone. Too late. But the cruel reality is that in case of a new war, the United States could be attacked by flying objects that had the ability to move from pole to pole at incredible speeds. Admiral Byrd reiterated this in a few different statements. He warned that there was a new enemy that could attack any country, at any time, anywhere, no matter the distance. When Admiral Byrd got back to Washington, he was immediately debriefed. And though he had just spent 2 weeks making statements in the press, after a lengthy interrogation, Admiral Byrd never uttered another word about Operation High Jump. The mission was immediately classified top secret, and any sailor who spoke about the mission would be arrested and imprisoned. The Navy then published a brief summary of the mission's achievements, and admitted some sailors were killed, but they didn't say how many. And officially, all the deaths were accidents, and the bodies were buried there, not brought home. During one of his flights, Admiral Byrd was missing for 3 hours in an episode of Lost Time, but that was officially blamed on radio failure. The official reason for terminating the mission early was for weather conditions, and that was that. However, you know how Admiral Byrd was missing for 3 hours and experienced lost time? Yeah. Well, Byrd was meticulous at documenting everything. But when he returned to the States, his journals were confiscated and classified. But the government didn't get everything. He had a secret diary that he gave to his son right before he died. And if any of what he claims to have seen is true, well, it changes everything.
There should be no green valley below. Something is definitely wrong and abnormal here. We should be over ice and snow. To the port side are great forests growing on the mountain slopes. Our navigation instruments are still spinning. The gyroscope is oscillating back and forth.
He drops down a bit and circles back for a closer look. He reports the green as being moss or tight grass. The light seems different here. He can see the ground easily, but he can no longer see the sun. Now this starts to worry him because he's using the sun to navigate, but he gets distracted by something he didn't expect. On the green valley below, a large animal is grazing.
It appears to be an elephant. No, it looks more like a mammoth. This is incredible, yet there it is. Decrease altitude to 1,000 feet and take binoculars to better examine the animal. It is confirmed. It is definitely a mammoth-like animal. Report this to base camp.
Admiral Byrd flies over green pastures that stretch for miles, and he's so amazed by what he's seeing, it takes him almost 30 minutes to realize it's not cold anymore. He shudders. Admiral Byrd grabs the controls, but they're not responding. He notices the plane feels light and buoyant. Then, on both sides of the plane, strange aircraft are rapidly closing in. They're disc-shaped and seem to be radiating light, and somehow they're running completely silent. Now, thinking this is now a really good time to head back, Admiral Byrd tries the controls again. No luck. The plane's engine suddenly cuts out, but somehow continues flying, controlled by some unseen force. The craft are right up alongside his plane now, close enough that Admiral Byrd can see markings. In that instant, his wonder turns to terror. The markings are swastikas. According to documents leaked in 1991, things back at Camp Little America take a strange turn. Just 2 days after arriving, bright lights were seen on the horizon. The sailors thought it was another ship, but they were below the Antarctic Circle in uncharted waters. The lights then ascended at a 45-degree angle into the sky very quickly. They tried to make radar contact, but were out of range. 3 hours later, 5 more lights appeared in the sky and began flying directly toward the ships. Anti-aircraft guns and 20mm cannons were fired, but had no effect. A radio operator stationed on the USS Brownson gave testimony of how strange craft suddenly appeared from the ocean. And this is corroborated by Lieutenant John Sayerson, who said objects shot vertically out of the water at tremendous speeds. One object flew between the masts of a ship with such force that the radio antenna oscillated back and forth from the turbulence. An aircraft from the USS Currituck took to the sky but was immediately struck by a beam of energy and destroyed. About 10 miles away, the torpedo boat USS Maddox burst into flames and began to sink. According to the report, this was the first attack of several that would occur over the next few weeks. February 26 would be the last engagement with the unknown craft. The Navy task force ordered retreat and left the area, a full 6 months before their mission was supposed to end. Although Lieutenant Sayerson couldn't identify the lights, he wondered if they were what he called German wonder weapons, being operated by survivors of the recently defeated Third Reich, operating out of a secret base under Antarctica. His testimony has fueled speculation that still exists, and to this day, investigators are trying to determine what really happened during Operation High Jump.